And you're welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet Live on eTV, live on Facebook as well. Tonight, as we all sit behind our television sets, we talk about a sensitive matter. A matter we would all have to talk about in order to arrive at a conclusion as to whether that's the way forward to go as a nation or not. And it has to do with a hint given by His Excellency the President recently at a global education summit in London co-hosted by Prime Minister Boris Johnson and then Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya. Now, what was the hint about? It's about His Excellency the President telling the world that they are considering the expansion of the free SHS program into the tertiary level. That's to say, free tertiary education. Is that a direction as a nation we should be looking at, considering the challenges we see the free SHS program going through even as it evolves? The absence of infrastructure, the teachers and their clamor for support, the various headmasters and headmistresses asking for funding to be released to them on time, and how it affects them. There is even the conversation about how parents who are willing and eager to pay for the tuition of the awards should be allowed to pay for these. And so we ask ourselves, is the timing right for the government to be considering free tertiary education? Is it the same challenges we are facing with the free SHS program we are going to be facing when it comes to the free tertiary education? Recently, there's been a conversation about how hostel fees are going up and students complaining. Just this week, UTAG is on strike. There are several other concerns when it comes to the tertiary education system. We have had even UTAG go on strike. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the tertiary education of our country. That's the focus of our conversation this evening, live on Fact Sheet. Here, you know, if it's not a fact, we don't discuss them. My guests are already poised to deal with the issues even as we elaborate on the concerns and the way forward. I know for the pessimists, they would say it's a no-no, we should not even be considering it. For the optimists, they would say, but free SHS has shown us the way and that it's possible for us to do it. Stay with us as we take a short breather. When we come back, it will be for me to talk to my guests to look at the issues. Good evening. And you're welcome back. It's Tuesday evening live on eTV. Show is live on Facebook as well with the handle eTVGhana. You can follow the conversation there and share your thoughts, your views, and your comments with us. Equally, we encourage you and entreat you as well to share the link to various groups and platforms that you belong to: WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram as well. We'd be glad if you do share it. But like I said, tonight our focus is on tertiary education and the fact that the president hinted that his government is, considering the possibility of free tertiary education. My name is Samuel Isha. My guests are Mr. Peter Anti. He is the Executive Director for IFES. Mr. Kofi Asare, who is the Executive Director for Africa Education Watch. And Mr. Daniel Osabute, Senior Lecturer at the Accra Technical University. They are my guests and they are going to help me discuss the issues. Gentlemen, good evening once again and welcome to Fact Sheet.
Good evening.
All right, so I will start with Mr. Sabute in the studio, and then Mr. Sari and then Mr. Anti will join us via Zoom for the conversation. Mr. Sabute, I will start with a comment from you as to the hint given by His Excellency the President about the possibility of free tertiary education. How feasible is this thought?
Thank you very much, Sami. Let me say good evening to all viewers of eTV. Thanks for having me. I would say that the statement by the president was just an expression of his optimism going forward, maybe what he's dreaming about, that one day we'll have free tertiary education in Ghana. But I don't see it to be anytime soon. Now, why am I saying this? Because even if you look at our secondary education, we have lots of challenges. we have lack of infrastructure, we don't have facilities, we have issues that has to do with inadequate teachers, and you know them. We were here, I think last month, we elaborated so much on some of these challenges. So one would have thought that it is good to dream big, you know, but I believe we need to solve the basic problems that we have at a basic level. If we are able to bring on board private senior high secondary schools to also augment the effort of government, it will help. Now, if you're able to set up a fund for people to do, voluntary donations, or institutions donating voluntarily into this fund, I think it will help. And then we should also look at a situation where the free concept should be restricted to day schools. You know, I told you last time that we need to look at it across board, all day schools. Okay, so look at, if you want your ward to go to a boarding house, then pay the difference between the day cost and then the boarding facility. I think if you're able to marry these two, we empower PTA to also introduce a token for goods and services in our various schools, you know, and this can even be under the strict supervision of the district. You know, we should think of some of these innovative ways of helping the system to work. But to talk of free tertiary education now, it is not feasible.
Well, until the bold decision by the government, when they took over power and they hinted that, you know, we have debt crisis and we had borrowed too much and there was no money, by September of 2017, they had started the free SHS, regardless of the challenges that you speak of. Until that bold decision was taken, we were always talking about the comprehensively free senior high school education. But it took a bold leader to take the decision, and here we are. We are practicing free SHS. Innovation has also allowed for us to, you know, run our secondary education with, you know, the double track system and many more, which has helped us get, you know, good results. The first batch that passed out, we also have results, you know, that came out. And so, are we not being too pessimistic, Mr. Sabuti?
No, we are not. You see, we need to hasten slowly, okay? I've already outlined some of the challenges that our basic education is facing as we speak. So one would have thought that we'll rather be tackling those issues. We don't have to be running double track. Okay, we have the Form 2 students who came home in June and they are still at home. Okay, so it is not too comfortable to run this double track. I don't think that the government is even happy saying that we have this double track, but it is because of necessity. We have huge numbers and we don't have the facilities, we don't have the infrastructure to accommodate. So we have no other option but to, you know, look at the double track. So Sammy, let me just walk you through funding of tertiary education. Okay, maybe that will help you to understand my position. We have subventions, especially I'm talking about the public tertiary institutions. We have subventions. Okay, now the subvention from government is made up of 3 different components, right? We have compensation, that is emolument, salaries, and allowances. Okay, that one is 100% borne by government as we speak. Okay, so the subvention is borne by government, that is salaries and what have you. And then we have investment. The investment has to do with infrastructure that we have on our various campuses, right? And then we have goods and services, the day-to-day running of our institutions. Now, apart from compensation, which is always paid on time, you look at goods and services, we have a challenge there. Okay? You look at investment, we have a challenge. You know, we have GET Fund. GET Fund is supposed to support infrastructure development on our various campuses. But we sometimes have institutions who decide to use their own IGF, okay, that is internally generated fund, to put up some of these structures that we see. But refunding becomes a problem. Okay, they go to GET Fund, you know, the usual mantra, no money. So let's just take out the compensation and then now concentrate on investment and goods and services. This huge costs is always borne by the various institutions. What are the students paying? They are paying academic user fees, school fees. And for almost 3-4 years now, when that law was passed that they need approval from Parliament before increasing fees. Okay, there has been gradual, progressive increase in school fees, 5%. You cannot exceed it, right? So how are they then running the schools? Basically from IGF. Okay, so you expect public institutions to run the school mostly on IGF. So if we have a situation where government is coming in to say that, okay, now I want to have free tertiary education, it means nobody is going to pay, no child or no student is going to pay fees. Okay, now how would the school be run?
Hold on to that thought for a second for me. Let me speak to Mr. Anti and pick his thoughts on the matter. Mr. Anti, is it an ill-timed proposal by His Excellency the President to consider free tertiary education? I have just been prompted. We are having a little bit of a challenge with your line. So let me come back to you, Mr. Osabute, and then let's continue the conversation whilst we resolve the issue with Mr. Anti's line. So you're making a point, until I abruptly halted you, that in the absence of the school fees, how would the schools run? Please continue.
You see, so here, if government hasn't released any subvention, at least we expect that the schools will rely so much on the fees that the students pay to run the school. Okay, and we know that delay, bureaucracies has always engulfed some of these procedures where you expect money to be released and they are not forthcoming. And one of the challenges that most of the headmasters and headmistresses are having in the various public secondary schools is the timely release of monies. Okay, and you cannot bring the same thing to the tertiary at the tertiary level. Okay, every year they prepare their budget, they send it to NCT, now GTAG. Okay, approval is given and all that. So Sammy, going forward until this issue of SHS constraints okay, are resolved. One would not advise government to even venture thinking of introducing free tertiary education. The reason being that the amount spent on each student a year wouldn't get close to what they spend on senior high secondary students. Okay, so that tells you that government is spending so much. Okay, even with the subvention, it is a challenge for you to say that, oh, don't pay anything. We are going to show that every cost. That will be too much.
Now, let me try Mr. Anti's line and see if it's possible for us to have a conversation. Mr. Anti, if you hear me, I was asking the question. Yes, I can hear you. So I was asking the question whether it is an ill-timed thought or proposal by government. I can hear you, Mr. Anti.
Okay, good. So I was saying that when President speak, I was saying that when President speaks, can I continue, please? Can I continue? All right. So I was saying that when a president speaks, there is an amount of information that it's available to him, and he speaks to portray the direction that he would want to carry the country to in the near future. So for me, I think that this is something that the president have thought about. This is something that he has discussed with his his men, the Minister of Education and others that are in the sector. And this is something that we are likely to see happening, and that is why I believe that the discussion that we are having tonight is very important.
So we would quickly take a breather. When we come back, then we would continue with our conversation with my guests via Zoom. Do kindly stay with us. Apologize for the very bad sound. This evening we are trying to fix the sound, but in the meantime, I believe that we can make do with phone-in conversation and then call our guests and seek their views as well. But Mr. Sabutu, you were building a case as to your justification for the position that it's an ill-timed thought or proposal in the first place. You were giving us an idea how the students' fees supports the day-to-day running of the various institutions. Now, is it not the same, argument we put forth when, the free SHS was being born, when the whole idea, the whole concept was birthed?
I wouldn't say the same argument. You see, at the tertiary level, managing that level is different from the basic level.
All right.
Okay. So
I believe, I'll come back to you in the studio, but I believe we have Mr. Auntie on phone that we can continue the conversation with him. Mr. Auntie, good evening. Hello, good evening, Mr. Auntie. Hello, Mr. Auntie. All right, it looks like connecting with Mr. Peter Auntie via phone is still being a challenge. We'll try and work our phone lines and get it sorted out. Hello, Mr. Auntie, if you can hear me, good evening.
I can hear you. Good evening.
All right, that's fine. So back to my earlier question, I was asking about whether the thought is ill-timed. You were stating a position.
Yeah. So I was saying that when a president speaks, he speaks from a wide range of information that has been made available to him. And for me, I don't think that we should take it lightly that the president made this statement on such a global platform. I believe that there's been a lot of discussion and consideration that have gone into this particular statement. And let me give you an example, the reason why I'm saying this. When the Minister of Education took office, his attention over the period has been on the country tertiary enrollment ratio. And if you've been listening to him, he keeps on saying that we are not doing well compared to other countries. And for us to be able to transform our country, of course, literature says that we should be able to improve our tertiary enrollment ratio. And now we are doing around 20% thereabouts. We should be targeting around 50%. And this being one of the key things that the minister has been suppressing anytime he's speaking on issues about education and how education can help us transform the Ghanaian economy. So at the back of this, the president comes and says that there is a possibility that what is being done at the senior high school level would be replicated at the tertiary level. It gives you an indication that there's been a kind of conversation that has been held on this particular topic. And that's why I would not want us to treat this as we treated the free SHS issue. We should delve into it. We should look at pros and cons. We should caution government where necessary and make sure that we do not rush into implementing anything again like we did with the free system. So that at the end of the day, the problems that we are facing at the secondary education level would be repeated at the tertiary level. So for me, I don't think it's just a statement that we should just talk about and let's go. I think it's something that all of us in the sector should take a critical look at it do the needed assessment and present well-researched policy positions on this to the government before such a decision is finalized at highest level.
Ms. Auntie, if government is considering the implementation of this, and you have given us an idea, the posture of the minister and the president himself, should they be considering it, considering the issues that you have already highlighted and Mr. Sabute has highlighted when it comes to the free SHS program already? We know that if we are not careful, there will be a bottleneck waiting for us with the number of students we are churning out from our various second cycle institutions and the lack of infrastructure that is at the tertiary institution.
I think that it's all right for the government to be considering this, but they need to first and foremost address the current challenges that we are facing within the education sector. I mean, at the basic level, at the senior high school level, before we go on with any implementation at the tertiary level. You see, what I don't want us to do is to say that this is bad and we should not do. It is a good policy if you are able to open up tertiary education for everybody to attend, and we are removing the financial barrier like we have done for the secondary school level. It is a good policy if we are able to increase our tertiary enrollment ratio to 40, 50, 70%. Like we have done for the secondary education level, where we are having enrollment going up to 80%, 90%. It is a good policy, but we should be very careful in how we go about it. We should look at the resources available to us and channel it to address the challenges at the basic education level, as we also address the challenges at the senior high school level. Then we might want to give a roadmap to ensure that within the next 10 years or maybe next 5 years, we will be looking at the feasibility of replicating the free teaching at the state level, at the state level. So I think that the conversation should not be whether they would or they should do or they should not do. It should be whatever resource that they think is available should be channeled to addressing the challenges that we are having now, whilst we roll out a well-thought-through plan to see how best to be able to implement this policy in the not too distant future. But for me, I think opening up the tertiary education level and ensuring that a lot of people have access to tertiary education like we are doing at the secondary school level is something that we should aspire, but not now.
All right, now let's look at the research as you speak of and the level of consultation that would have to go into this. Now, His Excellency the President made this statement on a global platform. The expectation of many would have been that key stakeholders like yourselves, the NAGRAT and the NAT and the Africa Watch and many more would have been consulted before even such a pronouncement on such a world, platform. Has there been any consultation about this idea, if you know?
No, there's nothing that I know. Of course, you know how our big men do their policy issues in this country. They dream about something and then they put it in the platform, and then before you realize it is already ready to be implemented. And that's been how our system has been over the years. But for me, the reason why I take what the president said very seriously is what I gave you earlier on. The minister has consistently talked about our tertiary education, how if we want to form our economy, we need to improve that. And where the president sat and spoke was a global platform that looked at education. So I don't think that the president will just go there and blow, or let's say, say that he have not discussing on. And I think that this is something that they are considering, and that's why I'm calling on all stakeholders in the sector to take this statement of the president seriously. Let's go down and then do serious policy analysis of this particular policy and release papers and release research reports to caution the government on the steps that they can take in order that they do not jeopardize our tertiary education and and living and worsening the current situation that our tertiary education is facing. Because of course, your panel member in the studio have already said there's a lot of challenges with tertiary education in the country. Infrastructure, lectures are even on strike. Senior staff members are on strike. Very soon, will start talking. There's a whole lot of mess in the tertiary education level. And if you want to open up and you have not addressed these challenges, infrastructure and all those things, then it means that you are jeopardizing education at highest level, which should not be encouraged. So I'm thinking that we have not been invited to look at this. We can take it upon ourselves to start looking into this. But for me, we should channel the resources available to the basic level, which is the foundation of our education. That is to build better, strong foundation. Then we can look at what is happening at the tertiary level, at the secondary level, and then in the next 5 to 10 years, we might be having a proper discussion and a roadmap to implementing a possible free tertiary education in the tertiary level. But I won't be surprised if this becomes a campaign message in 2024.
Mrs. Abute, let me come back to the studio before quickly I dash to Mr. Kofi Asare for his take on the conversation. So I remember the question I asked Ms. Auntie about consultation. Yeah. Now, I know you have been one of the leaders when it comes to UTAG and your activities. Have you in any way been consulted, considering that you're a tertiary institution, about the possibility of government funding tertiary education and students not paying anything?
No, UTAG as an organization officially have not been contacted. And let me also say that if the minister says because tertiary education is not free, that is why enrollment is low, I have my doubts. You see, we should rather be thinking of innovative funding strategies. Okay, how do we fund the institutions? How do we fund students? And then how will government even raise money? So we are looking at 3 different categories. Funding government, funding the institutions, and then funding students. Now, when it comes to the students, they are giving students loan. But I know the challenge. Immediately you finish school, you have 1 year to start paying. How many students get employed a year after school to begin to pay such loans? So there is a challenge over there. So instead of saying that we are considering making it free, we should rather look at scholarship. Can we strengthen our scholarship system? Okay, that people who have scholarship to go to the university or other tertiary institutions. Can we do that? It is possible. Now, what about removing all those bottlenecks when it comes to the students' loan? Can't government also say that, okay, we are waiting till you get a job, you start work, then you begin to contribute towards the payment of the SNP loan? These are alternative ways of assisting students to at least be cushioned so that when they get to the university or any tertiary institution, they have the backing, okay, of the state. Sammy, you know, students finish, they then got jobs, they leave. Do you know what is happening? We invest in them, we don't make good use of them, they leave. So are we also considering exporting our intellectuals after school? It is possible. A country like Cuba, they train doctors, they export them. Look at this country. We produce more graduates, we don't have commensurating jobs for them. Before one could say, Jack, they've left the shores of Ghana. So where are we putting our money? Are we getting the commensurating benefits? So these are things that we should be thinking about. It is possible for government to export graduates, okay, to countries that need them. When they export, a percentage can come to government, a percentage can even go to the alma mater. Just as we export players, we can do same. Okay, so these are the alternative ways by which we can raise money and then position our students in such a way that somebody wouldn't say that because I don't have money, I cannot go to university. There are alternative ways of supporting them. Let
me speak to Mr. Kofi Asare and pick his thoughts, and I will take off from the point you're making about funding. Yeah. Mr. Asare, I remember, you know, when the promise about the free SHS was made, one of the critical questions that Ghanaians asked was, how much is it going to cost us to fund the free SHS? When the government came into power, we were looking at the Heritage Fund, people kicked against it, ABFA, people raised concerns, several other issues before finally we were able to arrive at where we're going to source money for. In this regard, if you look at funding free tertiary education, where could government be looking at when it thinks about funding? Yeah, I hear you clearly.
The funding of it is not a challenge.
Mm.
Funding tertiary education is never the challenge. I keep saying that government can do everything with the exception of converting a man into a woman. Because you have the money and you decide on what to do with it. So government can decide to go for loans and use it to finance free tertiary and start next year. It is possible.
Give me a sense of your conviction as to why government can fund tertiary education without headache.
I'm saying that government can go for a loan today. How much does government need to make tertiary education free? Government needs about 1.5 billion, in addition to the current 1.3 or so billion being given to tertiary education. So if government is able to raise an extra 1.5 to 2 billion, it is able to finance tertiary education and make it free. That is just in the region of the same cost as the free senior high school. So it is possible for government to go and take a loan and then come and pay the fees of about 500,000 students. Let's work it out. It's not 500,000, but then let's assume that it will increase by about 10%. So government will require between 1.5 and 2 billion cedis to make tertiary education free within that context. It's possible for government to go for a loan tomorrow because we have been borrowing, right? So go and borrow and then come and pay the fees. So the issue is not about the possibility. It's about the cost. At what expense would that happen? As we speak, if you look at the education budget carefully, as we speak, secondary education is taking about 30%. Secondary education is taking about 30% of the education sector budget. Okay? The expenditure, 30%. Meanwhile, there are only 1.2 million children in secondary education. Now, where the majority of children are, close to 6 million or thereabouts, which is basic, is kindergarten, primary, and junior high school, they are receiving 35%, which is very low, considering the fact that we have close to 7 million learners in that space. And then tertiary is getting 25%. If you put it together, that is 90% in all. So the money is finished. The rest is for TVET, special education, others. So if you want to do tertiary free, it means that you have to reduce the percentage going to basic because you can't touch secondary. It's a political promise. So you go and take money from basic, which is currently the ICU when it comes to fund. You understand? So the cost or the expense at which a free tertiary education policy would be implemented is the issue. It will destroy basic. It will deny basic of its already suffocating resource situation, and then make it worse. At the end of the day, it is the quality that is produced at the basic level that cascades through secondary to tertiary. So that is the chicken and egg situation we have. We have with us. That is why I don't by any shred of imagination believe that what the Excellency meant was that Ghana was considering making tertiary education free. I don't think that's what he said because I also listened to him. What he was saying was that he was making a point about after making secondary education free, Ghana moving forward to remove financial access barriers to tertiary education in line with the education strategic plan objective of increasing tertiary enrollment from 18 to 40% by 2030. So that was the point he was making. The government is taking a step to remove financial barriers. And he mentioned that this is being done through the removal of the guarantor loan system. So I wanted to see it within that context. But even within the loan system, what are we discussing? As we speak, the academic year is about to end. They are just about starting an examination.
Mm-hmm.
The loan for the academic year hasn't arrived. No student has received the loan that is meant to remove financial access barriers. And the academic year is ending. So, of what relevance is the loan? Assuming the loan has arrived, assuming the guarantor-free loan has started, assuming it has started, and every student can now access it without a guarantor. Of what relevance is a loan that will arrive after the end of the academic year to removing financial access barriers to tertiary education? That's the question we should be asking ourselves. And that's the issue we should be interrogating, whether our talk is actually aligning to the work. That is the issue.
Now, you were making the case about whether it's the intent of the president to see to the actualization of free tertiary education. Let me quote him for you. And I'm quoting from Graphic. Graphic says, and quotes the president. So in Ghana, we've taken the decision that we are going full scale ahead. Now that we are widening public education at the secondary school level for all and sundry, to try and replicate it at the tertiary level too, the president is quoted. So it is a decision that the president and his government is considering to replicate.
You would have realized that he said by, then that's why he mentioned the example of the student loan. He actually went ahead. So
he mentioned the student's loan.
Exactly. He continued that statement. If you want to watch the video, he continued that statement and then he said by, and then he gave the example of the student's loan. That's why I wanted to put it within the context. If you capture that side, you will not be capturing him adequately. But he went ahead and said, by, for instance, then he quoted the guarantee-free students' loan. You understand? Because there's an education strategy plan which has been adopted by this government. And everything this government does is planned, situated within the context of the strategic plan. In that strategic plan, the strategy of government is to ensure that tertiary enrollment doubles from 18 to 40%. And the approach, among others, is to use the guarantee-free students' loan to reduce the cost, to reduce or remove financial access barriers to tertiary enrollment. So, but if the president meant, if he meant, different from my understanding, if he really meant that government was considering making tertiary education free, I have no qualms about it. The point I have made is that I have given you the scenario. There's a basket. 35% is going to basic, where we have kindergarten, primary, and then junior high school. And we have about 6 million or so learners, more than 6 million learners. And they are getting 35%. Another 30% plus is going to free secondary education, and 25% is going to tertiary. By the time we finish, the envelope is full because the envelope is done because the rest is going to TVET and special education. The only way you can make tertiary education free is to deprive one of these three main sectors of a percentage of their allocation and then move it to tertiary, because you will require at least 2 billion a year to do free tertiary, in addition to what is currently going to tertiary. So, are you going to take it from basic? Because you cannot go to free scenario because that is a political issue. If you go to basic and touch basic, then you will further suffocate basic, because basic as it is now is actually, suffering resource hemorrhage seriously because of the free senior high school. And so going to basic.
But why do you make the case, Mr. Sari? Why do you make the case and emphasize that government would resort to the basic level for, funding that's been allocated to them to use for the tertiary education project if it does come on stream? Because you made the earlier case that it's possible for government to borrow. If it has the free will to borrow any amount of money, it would not necessarily have to resort to the basic allocation, would it?
Okay. Let me explain further. You see, if government borrows, I'm talking about how government spends its money percentage-wise. Okay, government published about, let's say, this year about 15% of the budget was allocated to education. but normally the expenditure will be higher than allocation. But let's do the allocation. I'm saying that within the envelope available to the Education Ministry, within the 15 billion cedis, 15.6 billion cedis available to the education sector this year, if government decides that it wants to spend more on tertiary, okay, government will definitely have to move some from one sector to another. The 15.6 billion I'm talking about already contains loans. It contains loans. That fund has been partly securitized, okay, for a 1.5 billion loan, which has been converted partly into a 5.5 billion bond, which is the what do you call it, the Dutch trust bond issue. So there's already a huge loan component in the amount I'm talking about. The envelope I'm talking about contains loans, contains IGF, and contains GOG direct funding. And then you understand. So it is part of the envelope. The loans you're talking about is part of the envelope. But you need to structure a percentage allocation such that the relevant share must go to basic, because at basic we have more than 6 million children. Okay? However, ideally, basic should have been getting about 50%. Because we are talking about, we added, when kindergarten was not added to basic, and basic was only primary and secondary and junior high school, they were getting 35%. So by now, after adding kindergarten, that's about 1.6 million children. Basic should have been at about 40%. But basic has come down to 35%, even though KB is not part of basic, because of free senior high school. Because of free senior high school, because an extra 2 billion is required annually to finance free senior high school from the envelope available. So you cannot take the money from anywhere. It will be from the envelope, because the nation has other priorities in other sectors. Education is getting about 15% allocation or 20% by expenditure. I hope you are getting me. So
I get your point.
It is about there is always an opportunity cost, depending on how you want to spend the money available to you. You do not have you do not have a blank check. No, the sector has resources within which it has to operate, just like the way agriculture sector also have the allocation. That's why I'm saying that if you want to make tertiary free, one of the sectors will have to suffer. We have made secondary education free. Basic is the one suffering, because the amount of money they are receiving, the percentage allocation of the education budget that is now going to basic has been reducing since 2017, because we are sacrificing basic to implement a very, very important program, which is the senior school program. And that is why, if you watch, we have gone to subscribe to an IDA loan from the World Bank and some donor funding from DFID for a project called Gallop, being used to support 10,000 low-performing schools in terms of learning improvement. If you look at what that loan is doing, that loan is actually doing what, if there was adequate financing, should have been available to schools anyway.
All right.
Mr. Giving them learning grants, giving them support that should have been available if we had adequate resources. So that's the point I want to make. You can't make tertiary education free without one of the sectors suffering, because we have resource constraints. And I don't think it is a priority now. I think the priority of government now has to be on how to sustain the free senior high school program and how to mitigate the impact of the free senior high school program on basic education in terms of the availability of resources. We haven't finished mitigating that. And as I speak, let me conclude. As I speak, TVET in 2018 received only 1.3% of education sector expenditure. 1.3. TVET is supposed to be government's top priority solution to the youth unemployment issue. Skills training. It received 1.3% of the education envelope. So it tells you how stressed the education envelope already is for us to even begin the discussion free tertiary.
Well, sir, I'm grateful for your thoughts this evening. For want of time, Mr. Sabati, I'll give you 2 minutes for your wrap-up comment, and touching on the issue of opportunity cost if government decides to embark on this path. Apart from the point that Mr. Sari made about how certain aspect of the educational sector would suffer, he makes a point about the basic education, the fact that instead of growing, the allocation has been declining. He talks about TVET. What other areas are likely to suffer if hypothetically free tertiary were to kick in?
Yes, I mean, one area that will suffer will be expanding infrastructure at the various institutions. We cannot expand infrastructure. Why? Because in the absence of the release of these subventions on time, we have institutions depending so much on IGF to expand after we apply for refund. Okay, so if this government decides to then come in to say that, oh, no students should pay fees, what it means is that until monies are released for expansion of infrastructure, the schools or the institutions cannot take their own initiative to expand infrastructure. You know what? Research will suffer. Because from the IGF, institutions are able to sponsor their lecturers to embark on research. Okay. Another area that will suffer will be the enrollment. Okay, enrollment is going to suffer because, look, you try to make it free, the school say that we don't have the facilities, we cannot admit you. And let me also say that every year, the number of applicants that we'll be having, okay, far outweigh the capacity of the various public universities. So not that people don't apply, they apply, but the facilities are not there. The infrastructure cannot accommodate all of them. So I'll rather be looking at a situation where monies will be channeled into what? Expanding our infrastructure, expanding our facilities, having good laboratories, okay, ICT centers. As we speak, we are now using online. But we have serious challenges when it comes to internet connectivity. So why can't we channel such monies into expanding our internet connectivities so that students can be home and still learn instead of going to school, I mean, going all the way to the various institutions. So these are the areas that will suffer if government decides to go ahead to enroll, I mean to begin this free tertiary education. But as Mr. Asari rightly mentioned, I think that he was not really saying it will be free, but to remove some bottlenecks when it comes to funding. And I've told you, one of them has to do with assisting the student to have easy access to student loans. And the interest rate. They can also decide that it should be free for them. You know, I take loan, you give me free interest rate. And that will encourage more people to depend on the loan.
You're right there. Let me pick a minute from Mr. Anti as our time is really fully exhausted. Mr. Anti, a final comment and a minute from you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. For me, I think that we should not dismiss the idea that has been said by the president. And I say this with all the caution at my disposal, because I know politicians and what they can do. And I will not be surprised if within the next 2-3 years, we hear this being trumpeted all over the place and a possible plan being put forward for an onward line of free tertiary education. That is why I am calling on my colleagues at this time for us to sit down and analyze this policy and go into the system, the disadvantages of such a policy before the decision makers settle on what they would want to do. I think that's the only way we'll be able to help with shaping this particular policy. Rather try to assume that this is something that will not be done. I have given you an indication why this is something that is on the table, and I will appeal to the Minister of Education and the President so that they should hasten slowly if they are planning of implementing such a policy. It will be a big problem for the sector, and whatever support that they think they have should be channeled towards basic education this time around, looking at how they will be able to make application grants more relevant to assisting the provision of proper and quality education at the basic level. That is what I would want to say.
Ms. Auntie, I'm grateful you joined me this evening, on a fact sheet. I nearly said the Happy Morning Show. But well, just to give you a hint that tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. we'll be live on the Happy Morning Show until 9. There's a lot. Maybe we might extend the conversation on the Happy Morning Show. And so we encourage you to join us tomorrow at 5:30 a.m. I'll be there. for us to, set the agenda when it comes to the national conversation. My guests have been Mr. Peter Anti, he's Executive Director for IFS, Mr. Kofi Asari, Executive Director for Africa Education Watch, and Dr. Daniel Sabuti, who is a Senior Lecturer at the Accra Technical University. For the few glitches we experienced, technical ones, I sincerely apologize on behalf of my team. My name is Samuel Ishen. Let's make it tomorrow morning on the Happy Morning Show.